Okay, let's unpack this. For, well, for decades, the nutrition advice we all got was basically this one-size-fits-all approach. Things like that old USDA food guide pyramid from '92. Demonstrably flawed, really.
And if you dig into the history, it's fascinating. That pyramid wasn't just scientifically off.
Mm.
Its actual structure, the shape of it, was heavily influenced. We're talking commodity crop lobbyists pushing certain agendas.
Things like massive amounts of carbs.
Exactly. Like up to 11 servings of bread and pasta at the base. And fats,
Mm.
almost entirely demonized. It really prioritized, well, economic factors over actual public health. It was compromised from the start.
Right, and that failure, that lack of individual focus has kind of led us straight here, hasn't it, to this huge shift towards hyper-personalization, driven by AI.
Definitely.
And the market shows it. I mean, the projections are staggering, going from maybe $11–14 billion now to potentially over $46 billion, maybe even $61 billion in about 10 years. That's just enormous.
It is. And the
Yeah.
crucial thing here is that AI isn't just like a helpful add-on. It's essential.
The necessity.
Absolutely. It's really the only technology we have that can actually crunch the numbers on the sheer volume and complexity of data needed for genuinely personalized advice.
So integrating all those different data streams.
Precisely. We're aiming for what's called N of 1 precision.
Yeah.
Recommendations truly just for you.
Okay.
And that means pulling together your unique genetics, your microbiome, which changes constantly, your real-time metabolic responses, plus all that lifestyle tracking data from wearables.
The potential sounds amazing. Better health, managing diseases more effectively, maybe even just having more energy.
Incredible promise, yes.
But as the research clearly points out, it feels like we're walking a very fine line, an ethical tightrope, as some researchers put it.
That's the perfect phrase for it.
Yeah.
And that's really our mission in this deep dive. You want to acknowledge that huge potential, absolutely. But we need to focus squarely on the three major challenges that could derail this whole revolution if you're not careful. Data, bias, and the psychological side, making sure the benefits land responsibly for everyone.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute bedrock of this whole thing. The data itself. AI nutrition relies on gathering incredibly sensitive personal info, right? Way beyond just, say, your blood pressure or how many calories you ate.
Far beyond.
When people sign up, what are they actually giving away?
They're handing over this incredibly rich data set. Researchers are calling the multi-omics profile. Think of it as the most detailed, intimate health portrait possible.
Multi-omics.
Okay, what does that include specifically?
It starts with your entire genetic blueprint, your genome, which importantly doesn't change. It's immutable.
Right.
Then there's your gut microbiome composition. That is dynamic. It shifts with diet and environment. And then you add the real-time streams.
Metabolomics, basically, analyzing the chemical markers of how your body is responding to food right now, plus continuous tracking data. Location, behavior, physiological state from watches, rings, whatever wearables you use.
Okay, hold on. The genome part, that immediately jumps out.
Right.
Because, like you said, it's immutable.
Exactly.
If there's a data breach, you can change a password, maybe get a new credit card number. You absolutely cannot change your DNA. The permanence of that risk seems huge.
That's the crux of it. The immutability makes the stakes incredibly high. If that genomic data gets exposed, the potential for misuse, for discrimination, is enormous.
And the worry isn't just hackers, is it? It's about legitimate third parties getting access.
That's the major societal concern, yes. Think about insurance companies using it to calculate premiums or even deny coverage based on future genetic predispositions.
Or employers.
Or employers using it for hiring decisions, promotions, or even access to workplace wellness programs. Imagine being screened out based on your potential future health risks.
And are current laws, like IMPA in the US or GDPR in Europe, actually equipped to handle this specific kind of data? It feels different.
Well, the analysis suggests they're probably not sufficient.
Why not?
Primarily because of the sheer scope and, crucially, the predictive power of multi-omics data. HIPAA is more focused on existing medical records in healthcare settings. GDPR is broader, but wasn't really designed for something that combines continuous, intimate behavioral tracking with unchangeable genetic markers and real-time biological responses.
So it predicts future risk in a way other data doesn't.
Exactly. It's so high-dimensional and predictive of future health outcomes that it really demands new, specific regulations to properly protect people from potential misuse down the line.
Okay, so assuming we can somehow secure the data, a huge if, the next big question is how it gets used. And that brings us straight to the second challenge.
Yeah.
Algorithmic bias.
Right.
AI systems aren't magic. They learn from the data they're fed. So there's a real risk they could just end up reinforcing or even worsening the health inequalities we already see.
It's the classic garbage in, garbage out scenario, but writ large across society.
So.
Well, think about who the early adopters of these expensive personalized nutrition services usually are. Often, they're from more affluent, predominantly white populations.
Okay.
So if the primary data sets, the genomes, the microbiomes, the lifestyle logs used to train these AI algorithms, mostly come from that group.
Then the AI gets really good at optimizing health for that group.
Precisely. The models will inevitably be less accurate, less reliable, maybe even unsafe for people from underrepresented racial, ethnic, or socioeconomic backgrounds whose data wasn't sufficiently included in the training.
But wouldn't the algorithms just pick up on known genetic differences between populations if the data is there? Why wouldn't they naturally adjust?
It's about where the optimization focuses. The algorithm learns to optimize based on the patterns it sees most often in the training data. It might not recognize or correctly weigh critical factors for a minority group if that group's data is sparse.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A key one from the sources relates to salt sensitivity. There's a known higher genetic predisposition to salt-sensitive hypertension in people of West African descent.
Right.
Now, imagine an AI nutrition algorithm trained primarily on data from populations without this specific genetic variance. It might recommend a sodium intake level that's perfectly fine, even optimal for its main user base.
But potentially dangerous for someone with that genetic predisposition.
Exactly. It could give dangerously inappropriate advice, inadvertently leading to worse health outcomes because it's optimizing based on incomplete or skewed data. It optimizes for the majority it was trained on, not necessarily for everyone.
And that inaccuracy issue gets compounded by the cost, doesn't it? These aren't free apps we're talking about.
Not at all. The initial testing kits, saliva swabs, stool samples, maybe blood spot tests can cost several $100s up front.
Wow.
And then there are usually ongoing, pretty significant subscription fees to actually get the personalized advice and tracking. That cost alone puts it out of reach for a huge number of people.
So you've got potential bias in the advice itself and a massive cost barrier to even access it.
Yes.
When you put those two things together, it seems like we're basically designing, well, a nutritional divide.
That's the term being used, and it feels accurate.
Yeah.
It genuinely risks creating a two-tiered system for health.
Where the wealthy get cutting-edge tools.
Right, the affluent get access to these sophisticated, personalized tools for optimizing their health, preventing disease, maybe even extending lifespan.
And everyone else.
Meanwhile, the majority, often the very communities already facing the highest burden of diet-related chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease, they get left behind, still relying on the old, generic, often ineffective advice.
So the tech aimed at fixing health disparities might actually make them worse.
It's a serious risk. We could inadvertently widen that health equity gap we were hoping technology could help close.
That is sobering. Okay, let's pivot to the third major challenge area. This one feels more internal, more personal, the psychological impact. We've talked about external risks, data breaches, bias, but what does this constant, intense focus on data and optimization do to our actual relationship with food, our human connection to eating?
It can really ramp up the pressure. It risks turning eating, which is fundamentally human and social, into something that feels more like a clinical chore, a task to be managed and optimized. All that constant tracking calories, macros, intricate food scores, checking your biometric responses on an app after every meal, it can easily foster obsessive thoughts and anxious behaviors around food.
Is there evidence for that?
Yes. The research explicitly links heavy use of diet and fitness tracking apps with a higher risk of developing disordered eating symptoms. This seems particularly pronounced among younger adults.
It feels like you're kind of outsourcing your own body's signals to an app, right?
Exactly.
And if the algorithm tells you precisely what's optimal or gives food a score, then eating stops being about hunger or enjoyment and becomes this sort of moral test. Are you being good by following a plan or bad if you deviate?
That framing is precisely what can fuel conditions like orthorexia nervosa.
Orthorexia, can you explain that a bit?
Orthorexia is an unhealthy obsession with eating healthily or purely or correctly. It's not about weight, like anorexia, but about the perceived virtue or purity of the food itself.
Okay.
And this data-heavy, score-based approach from AI nutrition can really feed into that. When every single ingredient or meal gets rated by your digital authority, well, any deviation, even something simple like sharing a slice of birthday cake or eating a meal that wasn't pre-approved can trigger intense feelings of guilt, anxiety, and failure.
So food loses its joy and becomes about rigid compliance.
Yes, it becomes about clinical optimization rather than nourishment, pleasure, or social connection.
And this constant focus on the algorithm, on the data, it seems like it could erode some really fundamental human practices around eating that maybe we take for granted.
Absolutely. Two big ones stand out in the research.
Okay.
First, it seriously undermines intuitive eating. That's our innate ability to listen to our body's signals: hunger, fullness, cravings, satisfaction.
How does the tech interfere?
Well, if you're constantly relying on an app or an algorithm to tell you when to eat, what to eat, how much, and even when to stop eating based on data points, you gradually lose trust in, or even awareness of, your own internal cues.
You become dependent on the tech's input instead of your own body.
Precisely. That connection gets severed, or at least weakened.
Yeah.
You outsource your internal wisdom to the software.
And the second practice.
The second loss is potentially profound. It's the stripping away of the cultural and social context of food.
How so?
Food isn't just fuel. It's deeply woven into our cultures, our traditions, our family lives, our social rituals. It's how we celebrate, how we mourn, how we connect.
Yeah.
When AI nutrition reduces food primarily to a set of data points to be optimized for an individual's biology, it risks medicalizing the whole act of eating.
Turning meals into solitary calculations.
It can lean that way. It potentially turns shared communal experiences into individual exercises and clinical optimization. That detachment from the social and cultural meaning of food is a significant, though often overlooked, societal cost.
So it's this real tension, isn't it? On one hand, unprecedented power to manage our health.
An incredible power.
But on the other, the risk of turning eating something so personal, so cultural, into a source of anxiety, obsession, and even greater inequality.
The paradox is sharp. But the sources we looked at aren't just doom and gloom. They do propose concrete strategies for navigating this. It's about building in safeguards from the beginning.
Okay, like what? For the data risks.
Implementing privacy by design principles right from product development. Building privacy in, not bolting it on later. And crucially, pushing for those new specific regulations we talked about, ones that go beyond HIPAA and GDPR, to truly address the unique nature of multi-omics data.
And for the bias and the access problems, how do we tackle those?
It requires proactive effort. Companies need to make a conscious, funded effort to recruit diverse populations for their training data sets, not just relying on early adopters.
And check the algorithms.
Yes, conduct regular audits of the algorithms, specifically looking for biases and ensuring fairness across different demographic groups.
Right.
And for access, well, companies need to think beyond premium pricing, developing tiered products, maybe simpler versions, and actively partnering with public health organizations or insurers to find ways to subsidize access for lower income or higher risk populations. Access can't just be an afterthought if this is truly about public health.
Right. And finally, what about mitigating those psychological harms, preventing the obsession and the loss of intuition?
A lot of that comes down to the design philosophy of the apps and platforms themselves.
Meaning?
Designing user interfaces that deliberately de-emphasize perfectionism. Moving away from constant scoring or ranking of foods, perhaps. Integrating principles of intuitive eating into the platform. Maybe offering guidance on mindful eating.
And human support.
Absolutely. Ensuring that human coaches or mental health support are integrated into the service so the technology acts as a guide or a collaborator, not as this cold, absolute digital dictator telling you exactly what to do.
Yeah.
You know, what's really striking is that the ultimate success or failure of this AI nutrition revolution might not hinge just on how clever the algorithms are.
Right.
It's equally, maybe even more so, dependent on the wisdom, the foresight, the ethical commitment we bring to building the guardrails around it now.
So if we don't address these issues head on, the privacy, the equity, the psychological impact, we risk completely wasting the potential.
We risk squandering this incredible opportunity to genuinely improve health outcomes on a large scale. The technology is powerful, but its impact depends entirely on how we choose to deploy it.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on, maybe. Given how deeply food is tied to culture, community, tradition, simple pleasure, will this relentless, data-driven pursuit of optimal health inevitably lead to an erosion of communal eating? Will we end up at family dinners where everyone has a different algorithmically generated plate? Or Is there a way for technology to evolve differently?
Could it maybe learn to enhance or integrate with those cultural practices?
Yeah, could AI, for example, suggest personalized tweaks to traditional family recipes that respect both the individual's needs and the shared cultural context, finding a way to keep the data but also keep the joy and connection of food intact?